Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-matic presentation and recording for the warm-ups that coincide with the first half of the news cycle that we're currently on. Please remember before we get started to open up to the correct warm-up packet cycle and get ready to type down the question and the answer. Please remember to format all content in a different colored font for grading purposes, and also please remember to not submit when you're finished with this set as you still need next week's warm-ups. Let's go ahead and get started. From Monday and Tuesday, generally speaking, what is South Korea like as a country and culture? Provide 6 significant answers. So here we go. Let's get started. In terms of government, South Korea has a centralized democratic republic with 3 different branches. They have an executive, a legislative, and judicial branch. In many ways, they mirror what we have here in our government. In terms of economy, South Korea is one of the most prosperous countries, and if not the most, in all of Asia. They have the highest GDP and one of the highest export rates in all of Asia, and they prioritize education and healthcare as a means of help and support for the people in South Korea. In terms of standard of living, in South Korea, the country now has more of a younger population than older population. And of course, in South Korea, they have one of the highest life expectancies in all of Asia. Many attribute that to the healthy characteristics and lifestyles. In terms of culture, South Korea is an incredibly homogeneous society, with most of its 51 million citizens being ethnically Korean. Although, by contrast to North Korea, there are other ethnic groups inside South Korea too. South Korea is also very densely populated, as a majority of its populations do consolidate in metropolitan and urban areas. From a historical standpoint, South Korea was once ruled by many different kingdoms. They were also dominated by outside influences. But later on they were divided from their northern neighbor North Korea, of course, after World War II. And they've taken on pretty much a 180 degrees opposite stance as far as their government, economy, and more from North Korea since being divided. Some key controversies, though, about South Korea is that most of the news coverage that comes from this region does focus on the rising nuclear tensions with North Korea specifically. South Korea has aligned itself with anti-North Korean friends, which for the betterment of South Korea has helped them, but also on a larger scale has put them at odds with bigger countries like China and Russia, thus adding to rising tensions in the region. Let's move on to the next question of the day. From Thursday and Friday. Generally speaking, what is Thailand like as a country and culture? Provide 6 significant answers. So in this lesson, we essentially learned about Thailand and some other countries in this part of Asia. Let's go ahead and delve a little deeper. In terms of its government, Thailand has a constitutional monarchy. They do have lawmaking and judicial branches, like a National Assembly and a Council of Ministers, and of course, courts, but the king in Thailand actually has little direct power. Now, in terms of their economy, in Thailand, 32% of the whole economy is dedicated to agriculture, 46% is in services, 23% is in industry. Trade has really helped Thailand, and over the years, because it's opened up to other countries, that has thus elevated the lifestyles of people living inside the country in many ways. In terms of standard of living, most Thai people are of lower, middle, or working classes. The lower standard of living and life expectancy is quite notable when compared to other Eastern Asian counterparts like South Korea and also additionally Japan. However, that doesn't take away from the magic and beauty of its culture. Thailand gets most of its influences from India, China, and Cambodia, not just because they're smack dab in the middle, but also because of the story or history of these different types of peoples mixing with the Thai culture. A majority of the population in Thailand are Buddhists, and of course, Thai culture does bounce of old and new cultural practices and tendencies. From a historical standpoint, through diplomacy, Thailand was never 100% fully conquered by European powers, but ever since, of course, maintaining its own existence over time, Thailand has struggled with the royal government and growing dissent among the different factions within inside the country. For example, many protests have erupted over the years, mandating greater freedom and equality. And that takes us to our last point here for today, controversies. Although Thailand is a very popular country for tourism and a lot of people love going to this unique place, Unfortunately, all the excess in tourism of late has caused a bad impact on its environment and surroundings. Additionally, struggles for democracy and repressed minorities still exist and persist. Only time will tell how Thailand handles these types of issues. So there you have it. Those are the first series of warm ups for the first part of the warm packet cycle. Thank you very much for tuning in.